Hey everybody, what you see in front of you right now is the Chronos 36 millimeter Rolex Explorer homage with the new applied logo with the PT5000 movement. And then to the right is the Octopus Kraken, also 36 millimeter, also with the PT5000 movement. And I wanted to do a comparison of these two watches. I got these two watches to replace my Steinhardt Adventure 39. The 39 millimeter was a little bit too big on my wrist, and it also had an exhibition case back, which made it a little bit too thick. So couldn't really decide on which one I wanted to go with between the Chronos and the Octopus. Decided to pull the trigger on both, and then just do a comparison video as far as which one I would kind of recommend for majority of the folks. So let's get started. Okay, so from a presentation perspective, Chronos came in this cloth bag, fairly sturdy. Inside, there was a warranty card, a manual that's a joke of a manual, which is basically printed paper that's folded up. It had two watch tools, one screwdriver, one watch tool, and it was packaged up in this container, which was that was a nice touch. And the watch itself was, this styrofoam watch holder, and then it had a shrink wrap, and it was basically underneath this rubber holding strap right there, and it came in that way. I would say because it's around $170, it's a decent presentation. Maybe I'll give it about a 7. And then for the Octopus, it came in a better bag, I would say, soft to the touch. It's a pleather. Inside, you actually get a washcloth, probably a better looking warranty card, as well as a little bit better of a manual. Not that anybody looks at that. And then it came with a watch holder inside. And then if you kind of lift up the styrofoam padding, inside you will see a screwdriver for the links that you might miss if you actually don't lift up that padding. So even though the Octopus had a little bit more of a better presentation, it's still about $30 more cheap or expensive than the Chronos. So I would say for both of these, as far as presentation, they're a tie. All right, so as far as the Chronos specifications, I'll go into Chronos as far as specification, as far as what's listed versus what I measured at, and then I'll do the Octopus next, and then afterwards do more of a side-by-side comparison and thoughts. So the Chronos is listed as the diameter being 36 millimeters. I actually measured it around 35.8. I could not get it above 36. So it's just a little bit smaller than a 36 millimeter that they have listed. The lug to lug, they listed as 43.4, but it actually has male and links. Actually, both of those, both the Chronos as well as the Octopus has male and links. So instead of 43.4, what I measured at for the Chronos was 47.1. The thickness they listed as 10.85, which I think is a joke because it's not nowhere near thin as 10.85. It's actually closer to, on my measurement, 11.3 or 11.4. So I'll talk about the case a little bit later on down the line when I do a side-by-side comparison with the Octopus. So it is a little bit smaller in diameter as far as what they listed as. The lug to lug, they didn't account for the fact that it has male inlings, so they didn't really truly do a true lug to lug measurements when they listed it as 43.4, and then the thickness is definitely thicker than the listed 10.85. Okay, now for the Octopus. Octopus, they have listed as 36 millimeters diameters across. Right on, write that on. I measured it at 36. The lug to lug, they measured at 43.5, so 0.1 millimeters longer than the Chronos, but again, this one has male inlinks as well, and if you account for those, actually this one comes out to 46.5 millimeters, so it's actually a little bit shorter in lug to lug than the Chronos. The male inlinks doesn't protrude out as much as the Chronos, so it's a little bit more comfortable to wear. And then the thickness, they listed as 10.5 millimeters, and it is actually a very, very thin watch. My measurement came in at 10.5 exactly. So I would say when you compare the Chronos listed measurement versus the Octopus listed measurement, Octopus is a lot more accurate as far as what's listed versus what you actually get. Far as the bracelet for this particular watches, both are using 316L stainless steel. Both have deploy and clasp. Both have 3 micro adjustments at the end of the clasp that you could utilize to properly size. Both are utilizing full size links. There are no half links for you to adjust. So structurally, as well as the material, as well as how it kind of feels on your hands, they're pretty much identical. Now, if I do have to give a point to either the Chronos or the Octopus, I would give it to the Chronos, and my reasoning is as follows. In general, the screws are a lot more difficult on the Octopus as far as trying to resize the watch itself. But on top of that, there was one particular screw at the end where I began to realize that if I applied any more pressure to this particular screw, it was going to damage the head, and the screw itself was going to get stuck. It's stuck there anyway, but if I applied any more pressure, it was going to actually damage the actual screw head, and it was never going to come out. So in addition to that, when I initially got the watch, before I started to wear it, there was a pretty decent amount of squeaking that was occurring with the Octopus watches toward the clasp. Now, as I began to wear it and then started to kind of, loosen itself up, the squeaking kind of went away. But right off the box, the Chronos never made that type of squeaking noise. So if I have to give a point, I'll give a point to the Chronos as far as the bracelet is concerned. All right, so as far as the actual cases, both are oyster style cases, but the Chronos is thicker than the one on Octopus, and it has to do with 2 reasons. One, the Chronos has a little bit more of a box crystals, whereas within the Octopus is severely flat. So it really depends on your preference. If you like a box crystal, then you probably want to go with Chronos, but it does add to the thickness of the watch. And in addition to that, for the Chronos, the case back, both have solid case back, but the case back within the Octopus is much flatter and has more real estate that makes contact with your wrist than with the Chronos. So at the end of the day, I think it really depends on your preference, but for me, I would give my points to the Octopus when it comes to the cases because of a thinner profile, much more comfortable to actually wear on your wrist. And a lot of the times, if you're buying an Explorer or homage, chances are you're going to utilize it as an everyday driver or possibly even a sports watch. And I think the comfortability is a pretty big factor when it comes to which watch you would kind of want to put on your wrist for these type of watches. And I think Octopus by far and away is way more comfortable than the Chronos. Not to say that Chronos is not an uncomfortable watch. It is a comfortable watch, but you'll notice the difference between the two as soon as you put it on as far as how it feels on the back of your wrist. And I know that I could wear this Octopus pretty much all day and not really even feel it on my wrist. And therefore, I give my points to the Octopus when it comes to the case. Okay, so now let's talk about the actual dial. I don't know if it's coming across on the viewfinder. I think with the lighting that I'm utilizing, it's really not coming across. But the Octopus is advertised as having an AR coating. On a normal lighting situation, there is no AR coating. If they did apply AR coating on it, whoever that was doing it, they need some AR coating on their glasses because there is no AR coating on this Octopus. Now, there is a really great AR coating on the Chronos, though. Therefore, both of these are supposed to have jet black ink dials. But you'll notice the jet black ink dials on the Chronos in a variety of situations versus on the Octopus, you're going to have to get it on a very perfect lighting situations like the one I have right now for you to notice that it's a jet black dial. A lot of the time, it's going to look like it's under a haze. So it's going to look like a matted dial, I would say 97% of the time. Now, also on top of that, I think this is also subjective, but you're talking about the actual layout. So both of these are kind of homaging the Explorer, but the Chronos, what I really like about the Chronos is that compared to the older version, I really like the applied logo. It kind of fills up the dial a lot more. However, I don't like that logo. So compared to the version without the logo, I like this version much better. However, compared to the Octopus, I know people talk about the Octopus having the butthole logo or whatever, but just the layout of the Octopus to me is a lot more appealing than the one on the Chronos. It just kind of fills out the empty spaces within the middle of the dial better, kind of like a Rolex. I know Rolex has a numerous call out within their Explorer that kind of fills out that empty spaces. And Chronos does a better job than the previous version without the applied logo, but still, subjectively, I prefer the Octopus much, much better than the Chronos as far as the layout of the design of the dial itself. So there is an additional factor of how much of the dial is presented on the watch. So when I measure the actual exposure of how much dial is visible on the watch, for the Chronos, it was 28.2 versus within the Octopus, it was 30.3. And I'm going to try to put it a little bit closer together. And I don't know if the viewers could kind of visually see the difference, but in person, the Octopus feels like a bigger watch. It looks to be either a millimeter or 2 millimeters bigger than the Chronos because there is more of the dial being exposed. It looks and feels like how I envision a 36 millimeter watch should look on my wrist. So, in summary, as far as what I would recommend out of the two, I think for a majority of the people, Chronos should be fine. But for my preference, I prefer the Octopus because it wears a lot more comfortable on my wrist. And the main reasons that I got rid of the Steinhardt Adventure 39, even though I love the look of that watch, has to do with the fact that it was a little bit too thick. Octopus is a thinner watch, and it wore too big on my wrist. And I was looking for a certain dimensions, and then the Octopus fit those dimensions as far as what I was looking for on my wrist better than a little bit smaller Chronos. However, I think it really depends on your preference. If you like the newer Rolex Explorers, 124270, the 2020 and above versions, I think the Chronos might be a better choice because just like the newer Explorers, it has an AR coating. It is slightly thicker. And then I think the numerals are kind of the same on these two watches, but because of the smaller dial being visible, everything is a little bit more compact, which kind of resembles the newer Explorer with the bigger numbers, where everything is just kind of within a certain crowded space. So if you prefer that, I think Chronos might be a better option. It'll give you that Rolex Explorer experience that you're looking for the newer ones. But if you like the older version, let's say the 114270 back in the 2010s and the 2000s, I think the Octopus is better. I have a vintage bug anyway, so I like the more laid out spacing that is presented on the Octopus and the much thinner design. I believe the older version of Explorer was around 11 millimeters. This is 10.5, which is even better. And ultimately for me, I have to go with the Octopus, and I'll get rid of the Chronos to whoever that kind of wants it, that could really enjoy it. So that's pretty much it. I have some links on the bottom. It's an affiliate link. You don't have to buy from it. It's just there just in case somebody actually do want to utilize it. And if you have any questions about these two watches while I still have it in my presence, let me know. Write it down in the comments, and I'll try to answer them as if I can. And that's it. I'm not going to say subscribe, so peace out.